So I went to go see Black Bag today, and I honestly don't have much to say about it other than though it was a good premise, it was just super mediocre and drowsy. So for every movie, I take notes. These are the notes for the movie Black Bag. I don't know if you can see them or not, but there's nothing there. There was just nothing for me to take note of, really. I also think that it was just way too specific and appeals to an audience that's way too narrow, but anyways, let's get right into the preliminary hearing. The movie stars Kate Blanchett, who the only thing I've seen her in that I actually care about was How to Train Your Dragon 2. And then we have Michael Fassbender, who I enjoyed his performance in The Snowman despite some of the problems that movie had. The movie is rated R, runs at 93 minutes, and has a supposed budget of between $50 and $60 million. Yet another movie that spends tens of millions of dollars, and in this case, I've only ever seen one commercial for it on TV. Where is the Maze Runner marketing team when you need them? The trailer is okay, it does its job. What I will say is I wasn't planning to see this movie until I saw the trailer, so there's that. But the trailer is also kind of awkward. The music in it is just like that typical amateur, epic, dramatic, no copyright trailer music that you'd find on YouTube. And as usual, a quick synopsis from IMDb. When intelligence agent Catherine Woodhouse is suspected of betraying the nation, her husband, who's also a legendary agent, faces the ultimate test of whether to be loyal to his marriage or his country. And to be honest, I don't really think they commit to this premise very much. I actually won't be talking spoilers in this review, so you're welcome to sit back and enjoy my analysis on this one. I will say that the production design is pretty good. Everywhere we go, the sets look gorgeous, clean, and innovative. More specifically, the Woodhouse's, house, and then the place that they work at. All looks great. It is a drama movie, so the sound design is just pretty generic. Nothing wrong with it. The soundtrack is different, and you definitely do notice it, but it wasn't really anything special. It really just sounded like it was all done by one person, and by that I mean there was no orchestra or anything, at least in the parts that I did notice. The cinematography is fine, again, super generic by today's drama movie standards. Same goes with the editing and color grading. It kind of has like a cooler, dark palette to its vibe. As far as the story goes, again, the premise was fine. It was enough to get me into the theater, but it was just so complex and hard to understand for a lot of the time because the environment that the characters work in is just so unrelatable, and the story doesn't really make an effort to try and articulate that to the audience. Because the story follows this group of 6 people who work in psychological operations at this high-profile intelligence agency, but they're all just extremely toxic and just manipulate each other. One of these 6 characters has supposedly leaked a classified state secret to the Russians in the midst of presumably this current Russo-Ukraine war, and it sort of becomes like a whodunit sort of story. And that's fine and all, but I mean, Jesus Christ, they really did not do a good job setting this up at all. So much of the premise, at least towards the beginning, feels so vague. They don't really explain what the characters' jobs even are, or if they do, it's just extremely vague. And then the same thing goes with the supposed state secrets, where they don't explain it until a later act, or if they do, it's again just extremely vague to the point where I feel like I'm missing something, but I know I'm not. And this sort of strategy on the part of the writers is cause for a film that appeals only to people who have read the book for such a film, people who have the time to rewatch the film, or people who can relate in any way to what the characters are going through, which is only a small fraction of the audience. And if we look at the movie American Assassin, which is heavy on the espionage genre, what we'll notice is that while a few of the characters are incredibly unrelatable, our main character, Mitch Rapp, sort of bridges that gap because he's way more relatable, and through him we get to see what that line of work is actually like. And the thing about Black Bag is that it doesn't really bridge that gap for the audience members who don't really know anything about the intelligence community but are interested in learning something. The pacing is really slow, but then after a while, the plot regains its footing and then becomes more interesting. Like the polygraph scene I thought was really cool, and then the ending was good, but only in the sense that they were like drip feeding us the whole time, and then at the end we got a couple of tiny sips, but in general the movie was pretty anticlimactic. It's one of those movies that gives you the characters and then just lets you develop them instead of the writers just doing their job and developing the characters so that the audience doesn't have to. Our main character, George, is just so monotone and way too mellow. He pretty much has no personality and only shows emotion in like 2 scenes. And then by the end, it didn't really feel like he changed much. He just still felt like a stranger to me. Catherine was a bit more interesting. She had a little bit more depth to her character, mainly because she's the main suspect who sold state secrets, and it kind of engages the audience towards her, but still, she's not really that much more interesting of a character. There's also this guy, Freddy. He's really the only other interesting character, but only because he's just kind of a huge prick who often articulates his displeasure with things. And then the rest of the characters, they might have like a couple of interesting traits here and there, but they honestly really are not that interesting. Other than that, there's really not much else to say about this movie, so for my final verdict, I will be ruling slightly in favor of the movie Black Bag at 56%. I do think that the writer really sat down and put a lot of effort into the details of this movie, but it's just not relatable to a broad audience. Now, should you go see it? Should you rent it or stream it or just not watch it at all? I would say you could stream it, but only if you're like super into espionage and just the intelligence community, because you really got to be on your feet for this one. Anyways, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this review, please consider dropping a like. Next week we have Disney's Snow White coming out, so if you're not subscribed, you're going to miss out on a big one. But that's all for this case. This court's adjourned.